Welcome, gentle listener. I am Voldemort, and I wish to introduce you to the Warhammer 40k universe. Today, we shall discuss one of the most ephemeral and complicated of the elements of the setting, the Warp, and its denizens, those beings called Daemons. Although this is a desperately complex subject, please do not fear, for we shall only be introducing the most basic of the concepts at this point, and I shall take it slowly over the course of multiple entries, a snack to whet the palate, so to put it, upon which we shall build. The Warhammer galaxy is made up of two separate realms, two dimensions that match and mirror each other. The Warp is called the Immaterium, the world of flesh and form and physics that we know is called the Materium. The Immaterium is what shaman, priests, mystics, and the esoterically minded from time immemorial would call the astral realm, the psychic plane, the world of dreams, the lands of thought and emotion, the afterlife, heaven and hell, Elysium or Tartarus. In the Warhammer universe, the Immaterium is more a reflection of the Materium. The spirit worlds are affected by that which occurs in the world of matter, as below, so above, instead of the other way around. Some may say that this only occurred when sentient beings became prevalent in the beings that developed in the material world, for this is logical, but this may not be so in the Warhammer universe. There are hints and clues all over their most ancient history that the realms were once one, and not separated as they are now. At the very least, they were not as distinct as they are now for certain. These hints and clues can be found in the tales of the Eldar pantheon of gods, Caleb and Chicane, and the confusing war he waged supposedly on the Eldar themselves. They can also be found in the Eldar tales of the war in heaven, the battle against the Ingir, what we now know to be the Catan. For more information, please see my entry on the Silent King, Caesaric. But all of these fables lead me to believe that the worlds were not distinct. The Necrons, provided with information and arcane practices from their masters, the Catan, split the realms and locked the Immaterium away behind the veil, so that it could not be used as easily by the Eldar and others like the Krork, and most importantly, the Old Ones. For its use was ever the bane of both Catan and Necron alike. They could not resist the powers of the Warp. The simplest way I can describe the Warp is to use visual imagery. Now, think of the Warp as an ocean, a vast expanse of water as large as the realm of solidity, the Materium. Now imagine that the ocean is utterly clear. This is how the Warp, the Immaterium, began. It was, as they say, a blank canvas. Sentient beings that in the Warhammer universe can only be described as owning a soul are the bridge between the two realms and affect both in different ways. When a sentient being experiences emotion, they affect the Warp. When someone feels an emotion, also sometimes thoughts, they change the waters of the Immaterium. If you were to experience love, were to experience joy, then the waters around you would change color. They would become bright and light. Let us call this a positive color, or to be blunt, good vibrations, or so you may think. When you experience selfishness, desolation, misery, anger, or hate, the waters are thus altered to a darker color altogether. Let us call it red or black for the time being. Now imagine that the waters are not static, like any ocean or a stream. These waters flow in eternal currents. When there is enough of a color, the bright or the dark, it begins to flow towards itself, starts to collect into pockets of color in the ocean. But more than this, when it collects enough of itself, it begins to create a form of gravity or attraction that makes it more likely that the distant colors in the ocean will collide. They will be drawn to each other. Now, when enough of a certain color reaches a critical point, it then begins to evolve. At first, it will be just a drive, just a wish for more of itself to be generated. In this way, it will then, like an octopus, send out tendrils or tentacles to lightly touch those points which have generated it. So the light octopus in the ocean will touch the souls of sentient beings and try to bathe them in its light, knowing on an instinctive level that this will make the soul change more of the water around it into that light color, as it experiences a subtle pull on it to be joyous or in love. The person will then become a sort of processing plant for the changing of the color of more water to that which feeds the octopus and makes it stronger. As the octopus of light water becomes stronger, it will then attract even more power and exert ever more influence on the souls of sentient beings. When enough of the ocean water is changed to its color and collected, it will evolve again. It will then become semi-sentient. It will no longer do things out of pure instinct alone, but will start to plot and plan and organize its efforts. It will become a thing that purposefully and directly affects the souls to which it previously just caressed subtly and gently. If it becomes strong enough, it will then use the soul as a way to enter the realm of the material, and then cause its effects to manipulate that world as well, in a way to gain more sustenance. Think of it like this: the light water octopus, a being generated by the emotion of love, influences a man or woman and gets them to smile at everyone they go by, slightly increasing the chances that that person will pass on the smile. When moods rise, then expressions of love are more likely to occur. If this continues, the influence becomes stronger, and they can then get the person to buy 100 roses and give them out to couples who they pass, with simple statements like, "You seem so in love. I feel you deserve this rose as a gift for brightening my day." Hence there is a high chance that said couple will then warmly embrace and look into each other's eyes, and it is incredibly likely that this simple act will elicit warmer feelings between the two, thus giving rise to more love energy that the octopus needs to grow. Thus does the light being in the warp influence the real world to gain more of that which it requires to feed and grow. More love is brought into the world, and thus it gains slowly by slowly in might, and eventually it will become what is known in the Warhammer universe as a god. It sounds quite nice, does it not, gentle listener, to be influenced by Eros, to be an emissary of love? But what if the person who has been influenced to buy and distribute all of these roses? What if they miss their shift at work and are then fired? What if they lose their house due to the cost of all those roses? The warp entity of love does not care for the effect on the corporeal being it is influencing. Sadly, the more the person is influenced, the more it can be influenced, as their willpower and autonomy are eroded. So that if the octopus of light can influence them enough, wear them down, it then can eventually take direct control. It will inevitably mean that the soul of the man or woman will be overpowered and then simply locked away. So each morning the octopus of light from the warp uses them like a puppet. They know they walk out of a house where their child is screaming for food and is slowly dying of starvation. Yet their body is walking around the town distributing flowers, and all that person can do is look on through their own eyes, watching their hands move, their body controlled by this being from the warp. Forever trapped inside their own shell, forever unable to take any action with the vehicle, the body they once owned. Possession. Now do you understand? Now we get to the harsh reality. For the warp is not nice. It is not a shining ocean of brilliance and love and care. But why? For all sentient beings have the capacity for love, for care, for kindness in equal measure as their capacity for anger, envy or hate. What went wrong? 4 words. The war in heaven. The full record we cannot even hope to discuss in a myriad of entries, so my synopsis must be criminally brief, and here it is. The Old Ones weaponized the Immaterium. They began the tainting of the warp. During the struggle of the Old Ones and the Necrons and their masters, the Catan, the Old Ones were ever the masters of the mystic, the most powerfully linked to the warp that has ever been. What the modern description of psychers would be. They had no equal. At the dawn of time, when the Necrons and Catan attacked them with such fury and power that entire systems were winked out of existence, they fought back with the most powerful of all of the tools at their command. They struck back with the warp. More than this, they even went so far as to genetically engineer entire races that would use the warp as a weapon. And thus were the Eldari and the Krork created. Both could harness the warp in their own way, but their entire genesis and purpose was as weapons of war. A war that ranged for millennia, some say for entire epochs, for millions of years. And in this bloodshed and pain, this conflict that has never been matched in its scope or brutality, the very substance of the Immaterium was altered. So much of the clear river, the colourless ocean, was changed to red and black. So much of it was twisted with pain and suffering, rage and hate, that it has never, ever recovered. In those days were sown the beginnings of those huge malevolent octopi of hate and pain that would eventually grow to such strength as to become what are now called the Dark Gods of Chaos. The warp also spawned other denizens, beings of power that we cannot discuss today. The Immaterium was a colourless ocean with the potential to be formed and moulded through patience and love and kindness into a paradise of bliss. The war in heaven, and the horrors therein, the folly of the old ones in their opening the gates, changed the Immaterium into a thing of hate and rage and war. It became the warp. For now the warp is so stifled, so choked with the colours of red and black that anything positive, anything of light is now suffocated at birth, rent asunder by the negative forces that now preside over that realm. The old ones turn the potential of heaven into the pits of hell. For that is what the warp is now. It is hell. And all that stalk its corners are now dark and bitter, twisted and evil. Now, imagine that the affected person from before, who was spreading flowers, was now armed with an axe and an insatiable need to perform murder and slaughter. The Dark Gods are now so strong that they can willingly cut a part of their tentacles off, and allow it a form of semi-sentience and autonomy. But they will always remain a part of the overall entity that gave it birth. These are what are called demons. They are still one with the gods who spawned them, but may act on their behalf without it willing them to do so and moving them directly. Like having a hand that types stories you have thought of, while you fully concentrating on watching a show or listening to Voldemort. The greatest parts are called demon princes, and they can believe that they actually have self-determination, but this is never truly the case. Thus, too, are the smaller parts all just fingertips of the greater being separated from the whole, and then sent out to possess, to invade, and to destroy. That is all I feel we need covered today. I shall return very soon to continue our discussion and reveal more of the forces of the warp, what they are, what they do, and then how the entire Warhammer universe will unavoidably end. I have been Voldemort, your faithful servant. If you have enjoyed my introduction to the warp and its denizens, then please do consider liking and subscribing. Please do also consider either sharing or, if possible, supporting us on Patreon. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.